Hey guys, welcome to Introduction to Node.js, Express.js, and MongoDB. My name is Kostum Kharge, but you can call me KG. I'm a senior coding instructor at Coding Bootcamps, and we will be covering session 2 of this course today. Before we begin, let's look at the session outline. So in this session, first we'll be doing a refresher of essential concepts. First, we'll refresh our memories of essential concepts needed to grasp Node.js. We'll cover asynchronous programming, callbacks, timers, promises, async and await, closures, and the event loop. You must already know this with the JavaScript course, but it's important that we refresh our understanding of these concepts. Next, we'll learn what is Node.js and why does it exist. We'll learn what NPM is and how we can manage different packages and dependencies for our project. We'll also cover the fundamentals of Node.js programming and error handling. All right, so let's begin by looking at some of the essential concepts. So we'll be covering these following points: asynchronous programming and callbacks, timers, promises, async and await, closures, and the event loop. Let's begin by asynchronous programming. JavaScript is synchronous by nature, and it runs on a single thread, which means it cannot execute code in parallel. Lines of code are executed one after another. So like for example, let's say you have three variables, variable A, variable B, and variable C. All of these lines, and when they're added into a function, will be executed one at a time. However, to get asynchronous capability, the environment in which the programming language runs can be manipulated. This is exactly what Node.js was able to do. Node.js introduced a non-blocking I/O environment to extend the concept of asynchronous programming. This improves the system efficiency and throughput. One of the better ways of implementing asynchronous programming is a callback in JavaScript. Callbacks is a asynchronous equivalent of a function. A callback is a simple function that's passed as a value to another function and will only be executed when specific event happens. So you may have worked on JavaScript code to manipulate the DOM, which would look something like this. Let me go inside the console and write it down. All right, so let's say you have document.get element by id in which you pass in the button and you attach the event listener to this with a event of click and a function that has been passed into it. So whenever the user clicks on the button and the event listener listens to the click event, the callback function is executed. A few other examples of timer functions which you may have used while learning JavaScript or jQuery. We'll see them in the next slide. So the first one is set timeout. You may have used this to execute a block of code after a stipulated time period. So the best example of this is set timeout, and within this we pass in a function. Oops, let me fix this real quick. All right, and we pass in the time. So I passed in 2000 milliseconds, and this is the block of code that will be executed. All right, here if you notice, we have a callback function that is passed in the set timeout function, which will run after the set timeout function executes after the given time parameter, which is 2000 milliseconds. That is 2 seconds. And this particular block of code will be executed after 2000 milliseconds. So let's actually add a console.log here. Alright, so if you notice, it logged out hello world. Alright, so we'll quickly refresh our memory with other timer functions that JavaScript provides. So one of them is set interval. With this built-in function, you can set interval of time for running a block of code. So I'm just going to refactor the existing code that I have. So instead of set timeout, I will have set interval, and instead of 2000 milliseconds, let's have 3000 milliseconds. Alright, so the hello world will be displayed every 3 seconds. Perfect. Set immediate. So when you want to execute some piece of code asynchronously, but as soon as possible, one option is to use the set immediate function provided by the Node.js. It is similar to set timeout, but it's best to use set immediate to run a piece of code asynchronously as soon as possible. So promises. Promises are very important in JavaScript. Make sure you understand this very thoroughly, because you will be using this in advanced JavaScript, and especially in various JavaScript frameworks such as Node.js, as well as the front-end frameworks such as Angular. Promise is commonly defined as a proxy for a value that will eventually become available. So imagine you're a kid and your dad promises you that he will take you camping next week. So now you don't know if he'll go to the camping. Your dad can take you camping, or he might not take you camping because he might be busy, right? So that's a promise. A promise has 3 states. So let me go back in here real quick and open up the console. So a promise has 3 states. The first is pending. The next one is fulfilled. And the last one is rejected. Okay, so pending is that you don't know if you'll go to camping. Fulfilled means your dad takes you to camping because he's not busy. Okay, the not busy is a condition that we have to check. The rejected, that means your dad does not take you to camping because he's busy, right? So let's write some code for this. Let's codify this. So I'll just clear this console out, and I'll declare a variable to see if dad is busy. So I'll say is dad busy. So currently he's not busy. And let me create a new promise. So this is how you create a new promise. I'll declare a variable, take me camping, and this will either be fulfilled or not fulfilled. Will take me camping, this promise. So I'll say new promise, and inside this we pass in a function. So I'll say function resolve reject. Okay, so just ignore this, I just accidentally pressed enter right here. In this we have to see if dad is busy. So I'll say if dad is busy. So I'll say if dad is not busy, and in here I'm going to, if dad is not busy, then we are going camping, right? So I'll create a object for camping which will have all the information about camping. So I'll say where we are going. So let's say we are going into the state of Wisconsin. The time, let's say we are going at 10 a.m. The day, let's say we're going on Sunday, and that is it. Okay, now since dad is not busy, we are definitely going to camping. So I'm just going to resolve this request. That means the request has been fulfilled. So resolve camping. So that means the request has been fulfilled. And if dad is busy, then we have to give a reason because that is busy. So I'll just say var reason equals new error. I'm just going to throw an error, and the reason is that is busy. And I'm going to reject this with the reason. So which means we are not going to camping. Okay. So this is how you create a promise. And if I now see if will that take me camping, the promise is resolved because that is not busy, and that's why we're going, right? But what if that is busy? So if I say and I create this again, then I get an error. I get an error saying that that is busy, so we are not going camping today. Great. Let's go back. Async and await is special syntax to work with promises in a much more easier fashion. Uh, this is a way of defining the promises and handling the reject and resolve. You won't be covering this in detail because this is still an introduction to JavaScript, but as we move on to the advanced level, we'll definitely go in detail for async and await. So closure. A closure is a function that has access to its outer function scope even after the outer function has returned. Okay, so what does that mean? So let me go back here real quick, clear this out, and explain what this means. So let us say we declare a variable, and I say world. In here, I will say I'll declare a function called hello. I'll say hello, and in here, let me log out. Now, what closure means is closure is a function that has access to its outer function scope even after the outer function has returned. So that means we have access to the outer scope, right? So the outer scope in this case is variable a, right? So if I just say a and just run this function, so I'll say hello, I got hello world. Great. So promises were introduced to solve the famous callback help problem, but they introduced complexity of their own and also the syntax complexity. There were good primitives around which a better syntax could be exposed to developers. So when the time was right, we got a sync function. They make the code look like it's synchronous, but it's asynchronous and non-blocking behind the scenes. If you use async keyword before the function definition, you can use the await within the function. When you await a promise or await a promise, the function, oops, my mistake. The function is paused in a non-blocking way until the promise settles. If the promise fulfills, you get the value back. If the promise rejects, the rejected value is thrown. Consider the following code that I have typed in the console right here. So if you look at the first function here, it is using promises to make a request to the server, the GET request to the server, and get the data in JSON. Okay, and then according to the promise syntax, we're using the .then method and collecting the result. So consider if you were to be using some sort of function that does data transformation on the results, then you would have chaining of promises, right? So the code would just grow on and it would look complicated. So understanding where the promise is and where the error is. But in case of async and await, we use the async keyword before calling in the function. If you can see the comparison here, and since we use the async keyword, we can use the await keyword and have as many await keywords as we can within this fixed async function. So in here the code looks much more cleaner than what we have here. All right, so that's it. Event loop. The event loop is what allows Node.js to perform non-blocking I/O operations, despite the fact that JavaScript is single-threaded, by offloading operations to the system whenever possible. Since most of the modern systems are multi-threaded, they can handle multiple operations executing in the background. So when one of the operation completes, the system tells Node.js so that the appropriate callback may be added into the queue and eventually be executed. All right, so